Alrighty. Whew. Alright, that seems to be working. All that's working, I think. How is everybody? Happy New Year, by the way. The music's not too loud, is it? Shouldn't be, at least. I haven't really adjusted it that much, but I can always turn it down a little bit more if needed. But, welcome. As always, my name is Ian, the Part-Time Experience. I have a long history in Dungeons & Dragons, tabletop RPGs in general, both being a player and a Dungeon Master. I have written many things, mostly personal projects for a fanfiction site known as the Dark Jedi Brotherhood, never going back to them, but I used to be part of them. And I also have helped with a number of writing projects for other people when it comes to their own projects or their own games and so on. This ranges from, again, tabletop RPGs to RPGs in general, as well as a few other things, a couple of projects here and there with animations, short stories, etc. So I have a lot of experience with writing. It's the main thing that I do, more than anything else. So I want to help you guys write better. And, yeah. Oh, one second. My headset cord is all sorts of tangled the fuck up. Alright, hold on a second. That's better. It's one of the ones where you kind of gotta have to, like, take the cord and, like, dangle the whole headset by the cord for the cord to, like, unwind itself. I know some people are like, oh, why aren't you on a cordless headset? Because I have a cordless headset, but that's for work. This one is for me. I like having a corded headset. Not really, but you know, it helps. Keeps essentially things separate of like, oh, this headset's for work. This headset's for personal use. Stuff like that. But yes. Let's see. Where is my glove? So, as with previous times that I've done brief dev talks, I've done them at the end of games or at the end of a stream. So this is going to be one of the few times that this is the primary focus of the stream. And we've got a whiteboard. Oh, it did not capture the whiteboard. Give me a second. Is it going to think about it? Nope, it's not going to like it. Okay, that's fine. We'll do the other way. There we go. It's always annoying with OBS, sometimes liking something and sometimes not liking something. Alright. So, welcome to DevTalk Writing 101. Hey, Koopa. How to make your stories not suck. And you'd think, oh, it's not that hard. You'd be surprised. There is a lot of sucky writers out there. And it's pretty annoying. Let's see. Filters. Try to make it to where it does not. Come on. There we go. Sorry. Suggesting things once again because nothing is perfect in this world and that bothers me sometimes. But, alright, so welcome to DevTalk Writing 101. How to make your stories not suck. The main key things that we're going to be talking about is crafting the main story, you know, the whole starting out, crafting your main character, supporting cast, world building, and good practices. Now, I have a lot of things to say when it comes to pretty much every part of this. And the reason being is, again, I've played a lot of terrible games at this point. So I really need you guys to heed my words on some of this, because there's been too many times that I've played any game, be it a professionally made one, an RPG Maker one, or something else, and it has been fucking awful. Where there is issues with the main story, having major plot holes, or inconsistencies, or even jumping the shark, which is, jumping the shark is its own thing, but that's more of, you have to remember that you have to give an ample amount of time or ample amount of room for the reader or the player to suspend their disbelief. You want it to be convincing and entertaining, otherwise, if you essentially go too far out on a limb, you will lose everything, because they'll stop playing, they'll stop reading, they'll stop watching, whatever. A lot of these rules actually go not only for video games, but also writing in general. Be it for books, movies, short stories, long stories, what have you. I don't care if it's, your midnight novella about some smutty romance with some evil necromantic vampire. I don't care. If you don't write it well, then no one is going to read it. Or they are going to read it and then proceed to rip you a new one over it. So here's the fun thing about writing. Anyone can do it. Anyone can write. The question is, how well do you write? Is what you're writing convincing? Is it good? And so on. So starting out with crafting the main story, that is essentially the idea, the overall theme, the arcs, and of course the main hook. The main hook is what we're starting out with, which is the who, the what, where, when, and why of the story. Who are the main ones involved in this? Who are the main one that caused the what? When, where did it happen? Why it affects the main character? This will draw your audience and players in, and is key to getting that first spark of interest and convincing them to stay engaged. Vague mysteries are great and all, but if I'm 10 minutes into your game or into your book or whatever, and I still do not know what the fuck is going on, then I'm going to ask for a refund. So, I almost did the baddie. So, when it comes to your main hook, right up here, that is the first thing that you need to figure out. What is going to grab your readers, your players' attention from the get-go? What is going to say, hey, you should pay attention to this, or hey, this is important, there will be a test later. By the way, there will be a test later. And I'm going to tell you right now, I already know which one of you are going to fail. I'm very disappointed in you, Koopa. I'm kidding. Next is the arcs. Every story has at least 3 main arcs. The beginning, where it all starts, where the ground stuff is set up and laid out, essentially. The middle, where the stakes get higher and the meat of the expansion of your story. And then the end, where the climax is as high as it can reasonably go without detracting or concluding. Or rather, as far as it can go without detracting while concluding. And you can have essentially more than 3 main arcs if you're doing a multi-chapter kind of story where there's like multiple branches going on for this main narrative, and they have to like all kind of mesh together for one climactic battle on top of a tower or something. That's perfectly fine, but you will still always have the 3 main arcs at minimum, which is the beginning, the middle, and the end. And you have to pace them to be the beginning, the middle, and the end. Because if you have everything kind of like rushing out at the beginning, then you're going to essentially overwhelm your readers, overwhelm your players. And then, as with many things, if the middle suffers, they might not even make it to the end. And if the end is lackluster, whoo boy, people are going to rip you apart more than they ripped apart the people who did Game of Thrones, the TV series, because we all know how bad that series ended when it came to the initial running. So yeah, pacing for each of them. Make sure that you are essentially putting out the information and not making it overwhelming at first, as well as making sure that the arcs stay in good beat. There's no reason for the guy in Chapter 1 to be pissed at the other guy for something that doesn't happen until Chapter 5. Simple as that. Keep the arcs in order. Make sure that you get everything set up and laid out in the beginning. And then, during the meat and the potatoes in the middle, have the reason why they're pissed at each other. And then at the end, have that become heightened and then resolved. And what I mean by heightened and then resolved, essentially you want it to get to a point where it's like, oh, are they finally going to stab each other over this? Or are they going to actually make friends over this? Or, let bygones be bygones or something like that. But it has to be concluded. If you leave it just hanging there, that can be considered a dick move. Unless it is supposed to be a cliffhanger and it's something for a later project. In which case, that's perfectly fine. But you better be working on that second project. Another key thing when it comes to also this section, it's and this is primarily in for games, so tabletops, RPGs, video games, etc. Keep in mind player agency in regards to any branching paths. If you're going to have the players able to make choices, especially key choices, make sure they provide a clear enough difference to warrant going back a second time around. Oh, you chose the evil cleric over the good bard. Cool. Regardless of which one you chose, the evil cleric dies and the good bard joins the party. That's an example of bad agency and false choices. You have to give the players the illusion of choice while still cultivating the story that you want. This is also true for Dungeons & Dragons and any other tabletop RPGs out there. You give the players the illusion of choice, and you roll with it. Maybe their choice actually does have a larger impact upon the narrative that you're wanting to do for the game. Maybe it doesn't. But having the illusion of choice and having it have some differences is important. Maybe the evil cleric and the good bard do have some major or minor interactions with the rest of the story or how they handle certain situations. But they, in the end, you still get one ending. That's an illusion of a choice. And it still has some replayability just to kind of see what the different options are between the two. Or there's the major choice, which is a real one, which is if you choose the evil cleric and follow down their path, and then, you get a different ending versus if you chose the good bard. Things like that. So, again, primarily for games, keeping in mind player agency, that is the main thing that you want to be mindful of when it comes to any branching paths. Don't put a choice in front of your players if that choice does not matter. That is also part of the arcs. Player agency. I'm going to be stopping to drink a lot of water because I'm going to be talking a lot. Alright. So, themes. Themes. The theme of the story stays intact throughout. It must stay intact throughout. Not many easily jump from the Renaissance fantasy to the futuristic sci-fi. Alright? So it's best to make sure that the themes that are in the genre, or the themes that are the genre and such, are in line with the suspension of disbelief to where your players could reasonably see the two things existing at the same time. It's still weird to know that, fax machines, samurais, and cowboys existed at the exact same time. But they did. And that will always be weird. And as soon as you realize that, you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But if you're going to have this one city is, very tribalistic in its ways. It's still has thatch houses and, people with their own unique language, and that's where you're from. But the city 2 miles away, or 10 miles away, has flying cars. Okay, what the fuck? You have officially jumped the shark. My suspension of disbelief is gone, because how are these two majorly disparaging differences going on? little Timmy over here in the village is, putting mud on the sides of his house to keep it, insulated for the coming winter, and little Johnny over there is using his ray gun to blast holes in the school because, he doesn't like something about it. You gotta essentially make sure that it is thematic and it's possible, or it's seen as possible. It's also a major thing that was wrong with a lot of games that I've seen, as well as a lot of older books. And I want to point this out too when it comes to the main story and these themes and the ideas of these hooks and these arcs, and essentially everything else as we go down. Older games didn't have these because they cut them for development time and they cut them for storage space on whatever medium that you had them on. Doom didn't have a very long story or a very much of a story. It was more about a boomer shooter. Contra the same. It was all about, different things, but those ones primarily used a lot of environmental storytelling, which we'll get to. But the story was very light because they didn't focus on the writing and the story. They focused on the gameplay, the mechanics, and so on. That doesn't pass very much these days. You might be able to make something that's very mechanic heavy, something very boomer shooter-esque or something like that, and it'd be really, really good, and people will enjoy it, but they won't enjoy it for as long, and you might not get as much a reception as if something that hooks them and keeps them coming back and keeps them playing. I've played a few RPG Maker games that were like, this is a good time waster. It's good 10, 15 minutes to play, and then you've kind of seen it all. That's not good. Especially considering the dev might have put like 20 or so hours into it, and they did all this custom graphics and all these custom plugins, music and animations and so on, and the mechanics of the game are great, but there's no meat. There's no meat and potatoes. You just give me bread. I want meat and potatoes, man. So yeah, things to keep in mind while we progress on. Speaking of progressing on, we're going to be talking also about crafting a main character. Come on, stand with me. Who here has played a game where the main character kinda sucked? Because I can think of a few. I know there's a few out there that I could say immediately, and someone's either going to agree with me, or they're going to start sending me hate mail again, because, how dare I not like this main character? Which I'd like to point out, some of them just suck. So, I want you to think why that main character sucks. What made that character not likable? Even if the rest of the game was great, the main character could make you not like the game because the main character that you played as sucked. So, we help define your main character with, first off, goals. The MC from the newest Dragon Age is highly unlikable. I've heard mixed things about the newest Dragon Age. Some say it's really good, some say it's worth playing, some say it's not good. I'm still on the fence as to whether or not I'm going to purchase it, because I'm still upset about the other Dragon Ages. Primarily how Dragon Age 2 sucked, and Inquisition was better-ish, but not great. So, but there's others out there. Like, what's a good example? What's one fixated rant I had? Oh yeah, Dart from Legend of Dragoon. I know some people are going to hate me. It's like, oh, you think Legend of Dragoon's bad. I think it's mid. Certainly an underground hit, but it did not age well at all. But because they're written as a template of sorts, the well-rounded, goody two-shoes who solves everything easily with no problems is universally liked by everyone in the game. Yeah, that is called a Mary Sue. We'll put this over there. Mary Sue. That will be part of the humanization that we're going to talk about, actually. So, Mary Sues are bad. But we'll talk about that in a moment. So as far as your main character, what is their goals? What is their main goal, and how does it tie in with the rest of the main story? Even if their dreams are unrelated to the main story, their goals need to be something that compels them to push on. Example, Jark. Jark dreams of being the greatest chef in the country. However, someone just ran over his dog, kidnapped his best friend, and pissed in his oatmeal. So he's going to go on a violent spree to rescue their friend and get revenge. Jark still wants to be the greatest chef in the country. He dreams of being a great chef. But his goal is to rescue their friend and get revenge. You could probably tie the two things together. Maybe he has to do something chef-related. Maybe he has to essentially enter a cooking competition for one reason or another. You can make it as contrived as you want, but making it convincingly contrived and making it actually fit in with not only the character but the main story itself is what's important. There is no reason for John Wick to stop, doing John Wick things to enter in a cooking competition where he has to cook some sort of 5-star, thing in order to try and get to some guy. No, that doesn't make sense. Why would he do that? El Forta X John Wicks. Oh. But you see what I mean, though. It's making it essentially fit. Does his dream and does his main goal work with the main story, with that overall narrative that is going on? And the next part is humanized. Humanization of your character is important. As it was about making sure your characters are relatable to your players, it is also important that your character is essentially not perfect. If your character is a broody, unlikable asshole, then players won't like them as much. A flawed character is a convincing character. The character can be an asshole, but you've got to make them a likable one. They're willing to help to an extent, even if it's solely for their own benefits, but they'll play nice to an extent and give a few witty remarks here and there to annoy the others. That's good. But if he's just constantly pissing in other people's oatmeals, shoving them away, and just being broody and just not well-rounded at all, it makes them boring. Rengen in Mob Psycho is so good. Yes, because he's a con man, he knows it, and he does nothing but talk and be charismatic. He is a humanized character because internally he is panicking, waiting for the moment that everything fucks up, and he is revealed. Oh wait, no, Rengen. Am I thinking of the right one? God, it's been years since I watched my Mob Psycho. Oh, I'm probably thinking of the wrong one now that I said all that. It's right? Okay. I was about to panic for a second. Also with the whole humanization is, don't do a Mary Sue. Mary Sues are bad. A Mary Sue is someone who is liked by everybody for no real reason at all. Or they don't have to do a lot in order to get other people to like them. And it is annoying. It's really annoying. It's bad and lazy writing. Because everyone knows someone who has made a Mary Sue character for some sort of fan fiction that they inserted themselves into. And we all know it was Bird Bunch on fanfiction.net writing for Inuyasha. I'm kidding, Bird Bunch. We don't know that. That's your secret. But, that's essentially what the whole thing is someone essentially made their character and it's a self-insert. It's either actually them or it's someone they want to be, and this perfect person they can never do wrong, or their life is just so tough because of these many minor things that really don't matter, and everyone likes them and is so supporting of them and so on. Again, it's bad and lazy writing. Don't do it. Make your character flawed. A flawed character is a convincing character. Make them relatable to your average audience member. And I say your average audience member because your story overall will try and hit to those audience members only and primarily. played a game with a self-insert fantasy fulfillment, pointed it out, and the person got mad. Yeah. You see it a lot, unfortunately, especially when it comes to indie games and solo devs. It's very annoying, too. Shitload of JRPGs suffer from this, or a lot of RPG Maker RPG games. Yes, it is a major problem, because people think, oh, if I make them super powerful, or I make them, liked by everyone, then, I'll be liked. And, again, people are going to be upset with me by saying this, but anime is also really bad about this, especially isekai animes, especially harem animes, which are just isekais too, if you think about it. Especially ones like Sword Art Online. It's terrible. It's not well written. And I can say that because I watched it. I've also watched all of Naruto. I watched every episode of Naruto and Naruto Shippuden. I read every manga of Naruto and Naruto Shippuden. And I can say, without a doubt, and 100% certainty in my mind, that it is terribly written. And we'll get to that in a moment, in the next section. But first, please, for the love of God, make your character relatable. Making him some broody, trench coat wearing idiot who, never leaves his room, but he's super good at video games, and that somehow translates to a VR dive where he's got to use his muscle memory to actually move around and shit. It works perfectly. Whatever. Terribly wrong, terribly written, and honestly, I'm glad that they're redoing the whole series, but they should have redone it by throwing it in the fire. Anyways, going on to the next part. Backstory. When it comes to this, an info dump is best avoided. An info dump is best avoided in general, but especially when it comes to a backstory, small tidbits of the main character's backstory coming up from time to time is good. Essentially, kind of like sprinkling it throughout the story, primarily in the beginning, maybe one or two near the middle or the end. Actually, no, don't do it towards the end. Mostly do it during the beginning and the middle. The end is for the conclusions of things, not for new information. I've used this in one of my own projects also that I'm currently working on, where the main character recognizes an ore that's being displayed. Even though it closely remembers a different ore, he correctly says, oh, hey, this is called ore. When someone asks him, how does he know that this is called ore and not another ore, he says, oh, I used to be a miner. We gathered this stuff all the time. You could tell the difference between the two here. And then he proceeded to describe the difference between called ore and the other ores that were normally found in the area. It, one, imparted a piece of his backstory, the fact that he is a miner and he does know his metals. And two, it tied in with the current story as they were talking about the ore and its uses, as well as how important it was to the story at the moment. And three, it provided information to the player, because suddenly the player not only knows, oh hey, Leon there used to be a miner, and he knows about ores, which means he knows stuff about metalwork. And this was also very good because, especially since the ore itself that was being talked about was used in the crafting system that I was working on, where it was essentially like the building blocks of enchantments, to where you could get a piece of equipment and then enchant it using this ore by pulling out the magical stuff. Details about another time. But the idea of using small details like that to further flesh out your character, especially your main character, and provide little tidbits of their backstory, as well as tying it into the main story or the side story that is currently present, that helps flesh out the character more, makes them more interesting and more useful in the long run. Whew. So, speaking about useful, let's talk about the supporting cast. Oh, Captain, my Captain. What is the supporting cast? Supporting cast is pretty much everyone who is not your main character. Everyone. Doesn't matter if there's some sort of little spirit thing stapled to them throughout the beginning and the middle and the end, like Navi or whatever. Doesn't matter if they are playing the role of a secondary character through the interactions, then they are a secondary character, or they are a supporting cast. The main character is always who the player plays as. The real tragedy is that people who need to know all this, you would be surprised. Yeah, all the people who really need to know this aren't watching. It is sad. It is a tragedy in its own, but thankfully, I'm going to put this all up on my YouTube afterwards, because why not? But yeah, I really wish more people from the community would be aware as to what's going on in regards to, hey, fuckers, learn to write. Please, K, thanks. Bye. But yeah. Your supporting characters is everyone that your main character isn't. Everyone that the player is not playing as is the supporting cast. This ranges from everyone from in the party to the shopkeeper that you run into that sells you questionable stuff. Or, you know, the court jester that's currently licking the doorknobs. I don't know. Tell them, ain't no plug-in for a good story. There isn't. As I said earlier, anyone can write. The question is, how well do you write? So, diverse and distinct. Make sure that the supporting cast is diverse, and not only looks, but personalities is important. It makes them seem less like wallflowers or set pieces and more like actual characters that could have an impact on the main story. Different walks of life, different roles in the cast, etc. Big shield guy is standing there taking the hits for you. But he's also a pretty good chef and likes talking about his life back home with his grandmama. Remembering that dialogue does not follow perfect grammar because some dialects and regions tend to change how they speak, dropping letters or entire words, and wrapping all that together with Big Shield Guy. Maybe he drops G's and he doesn't say grandmama, he says grandmama, or ain't nothing to it, or something like that. Things like that adds a bit of diversity and distinction to your character. Even if they are a supporting cast member, it makes them seem different and unique and stand out, and which is what you want. You don't want them to outshine the main character, but you want them to be distinct and different from the main character. Ooh. And there's also the fact of dynamic relationships. How does your supporting cast interact with each other? When the main character is not around, or is around, how do those two characters interact? And I don't mean just two characters don't like each other and they have a snide comment now and then, but also how they work together, or in some cases, don't work together. Smilton doesn't like Jeremy because Jeremy talks too damn much. He'll work with Jeremy when he has to, and if the main character is nearby, he'll ask the main character to please shut Jeremy up before he does it himself. Jeremy, on the other hand, feels like he's not talking too much. He thinks he's doing his best to warm Smilton up for that big hug that's going to happen soon. Because when not working, Smilton goes to great lengths to not interact with Jeremy. That is a dynamic relationship. They are both wanting to work and help the main character, but they don't get along because one or another reason. Maybe Jeremy's too stupid to realize that, Smilton fucking hates his guts. Maybe Smilton doesn't like Jeremy because Jeremy won't shut up. Doesn't matter. They get along to an extent, but maybe not. Another game that I can think of that actually works with something like this is Valkyrie Chronicles. Oh, or is it Valkyria Chronicles? I was thinking about replaying it again. It's been so long. Valkyria Chronicles, yeah. So Valkyria Chronicles is nice because there actually is, unfortunately, weaponized racism in the game, to where certain characters will either perform better or perform worse based upon who they are standing next to. It's bad, but it's an example of dynamic relationships. You could have two members of your team that are very good at what they do, and all of their abilities work well together, but that last thing makes them not work well together. Primary school mechanics? Yeah, I guess that's one way to put it. But yeah, and that's kind of how it is. You could do the same with the rest of... I don't want to sit beside Jack. Why don't you want to sit beside Jack? He's a country bumpkin, and I saw him picking his nose the other day. Jack, why are you picking your nose? I wasn't picking my nose, I was counting my nose hairs. But yeah, having dynamic relationships helps set the cast apart and again further show them that they're unique. You never want the dynamics to overshadow the main story or to outshine the main character, but you want it to add like a seasoning to food. Each of these are like a seasoning when it comes to your supporting cast. Season your goddamn food. If I go to your house to eat dinner and it is the blandest thing that I have ever put in my mouth, I'm not only going to spit it out, I'm going to piss on your floor, and then I'm going to insult you. Because season your damn food. And no, salt and pepper are not the only seasonings in existence. There are other ones. There's basil, there's garlic, there's oregano, there's thyme, there's rosemary. Fucking use your seasonings. Anyways, minor tangent. Apologies. So, how about personal arcs? Why should your player even care about this supporting character? What makes them important to the story in a major and or minor way? A good supporting cast member has an arc of their own to where they develop further, either with or without the main character, but in a way that the player gets to witness it. Maybe they go on a solo run or take command for a mission or two, something like that. Oh, hey Sai, welcome to the show. But yeah, when it comes to the personal arcs, it's essentially you want the character to grow some. They don't have to grow as much as the main character, they have to grow some. Because if they don't grow some, then they just stagnate. And a stagnant character does not add to the story. They are simply there to decorate and be a wall piece, and we don't want that. We want them to actually add to the story. We want them to be interesting. We want to know, why should I care about this one random NPC that wants to join up with my party? Are they useful? Okay. Fine. I guess I'll run them around for a bit. Oh, what's that? They have a quest that makes them slightly more useful? Okay, let's do the quest, see how this goes. Oh, hey, 10 quests later and, I've got romance options now. Okay, hold on, what happened? Versus some games where it's like, hey, you did this one thing for me, I'm going to drop my pants now. That's not a personal arc. You're just horny, okay? Just letting you know that. Raise your standards. The same with, every cast member from Baldur's Gate 3. Only 2 of them are actually worth dating. The rest are damaged and have so much emotional baggage, it is not good for you. Alright? Cool. Great talk. Fuck you, Gale, you third-rate wizard. Fucking shoe eater. Anyways, personal arcs are also another seasoning. Essentially giving more time for the player to interact with the character, get to know them better, possibly get benefits from the character. Some might say, oh, that's padding of the story. It's not padding, it's extra content. And sometimes that extra content can become main content. It just really depends on how you package it and present it to the players. And remember, so long as you write it well and you make it interesting, it will work out. So, let's go on to world building. No Legos included. Yeah, you don't get Legos. You don't even get Mega Blocks. You don't even get Connects. You don't get anything. You don't even get Lincoln Logs for this shit. World building starts small. Starting small is normally the best way to start. It's the immediate stuff first. What does the reader or player need to know? What are the basic things that a person living in this world or story that you have created should know? Small bits of info being dropped here and there and throughout are always good for fleshing things out, especially again during the beginning and middle arcs. The setup and then the meat and potatoes of your story. If the player's character belongs to an area that worships a particular god, for example, then perhaps having an NPC or another character mentioning that god helps, kind of show that, oh yeah, this is totally normal in this area. Such as, I wish I could help, but I have to finish my prayers to the 12 divines. Or, I prayed to Modaris all night, and I scored really well on that test today. God of Knowledge wins again. Things like that. Even if it's just like one-off comments, you just talk to a random NPC and they've got like 1 or 2 lines to add, and that's it. That adds to the world building because it makes the world feel lived in. And at the same time, it's in the immediate area that the player is in. Or essentially, when they're first starting out, it could be that first opening town that they're in. You are starting small, which builds into also establishing the norm, which we will get into in just a moment. But start small. Start with the immediate area. Don't think of, oh, I'm going to build out this whole entire fucking world with multiple continents and 7 areas per continent that you have to go through and all that jazz. No, scrap all that. Actually, don't scrap it. Just put a pin in it. Put a pin in it and stick it on the board in the other fucking room. Because you're getting ahead of yourself. Start small. Pick a spot on the map. Build. You want to build the immediate town that they start in, the immediate area that they start in, and 2 others. And you want to do essentially base bone information about those towns. Do they have similar rulings? Do they have similar, governments, etc., and so on? Or, are they at war with each other? Or are they just pissed at each other? Are they rather good? Stuff like that. Figure that out, and then build a little bit more. And then refine. Make it look nice. Make it sound nice. Make it fit well. Polish that until it's no longer a turd and it's a diamond. And then do it again for the next couple of towns. And then do it again for the next couple of towns. And just keep doing it. And eventually you will have your multi-continent, 7 areas per continent world with space travel to a whole secondary world that has 7 more continents or whatever. It doesn't matter. The whole thing is to perfect the process before you get there. It's okay to have the overarching, mega idea, but making the small stuff is important, and the small stuff has to come first. It's the groundwork. Politics that affected by the world building blocks is super important too. Yes. How does everything work together? How does Nation 1 and Nation 2 get along? Stuff like that. That also is actually come somewhat, in establish the norm. So, good point, Bird Bunch. Next one is show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. How often do you guys hear that when it comes to any project or anytime you wrote something like in school or something? Show, don't tell. It's often said and it's expected to be understood, but many don't really go in detail or go on about how this is done. It's a movie, not a book. There's an actual supernatural god, so society will not look regular real life world. Correct. And also correct, it's a movie, not a book. But not just that. You can also show, but don't tell in books too. We will get to that. When you are told to show something, don't tell it. That can mean a number of things. Most of the time, it is that there's a large amount of information being told to the players or to the readers instead of being shown to them. Don't tell the players that a particular creature or enemy is a big threat. Show the players why he's a big threat. Maybe you have an NPC member in the party who's been there for maybe a good 20-30 minutes of story time. Not just gameplay time, story time. And that NPC is relatively useful, for that portion of the story. They're competent in combat, they're competent at what they do. And then have this big threat come up and proceed to thrash that NPC like it's WrestleMania and they're a small child that got picked up by the Undertaker or something. I don't know. Maybe don't tell me that the army of the neighboring kingdom is full of evildoers. Show me what evils that they are doing, or the aftermath of their evils, like coming up a town that's been raided by the said army, and only a few villagers are left alive. Don't tell me that the character is nervous. Show me by describing how his nervousness shows. Maybe his hands shake, maybe his teeth clench as he's essentially breathing a little bit more rapidly, thinking about attacking. Uh, like Luca Blight being like Die Pig. Unfortunately, I don't get that reference, Sai. I'm sorry. I've let you down. But only this time. I blame Koopa. But yeah, showing, not telling is a key thing to writing, because the idea is you are expanding and being more informative without info dumping. That's also another thing. Show, don't tell is about showing why something and conveying that through what? Environmental storytelling. And environmental storytelling is also another big thing when it comes to video games and movies and shows and even manga or comic books. Environmental things added to the scene will tell more than saying it out right. Don't tell me, oh, he was totally feeling nervous because he saw the blood. Show me by painting blood all over the fucking scene, and then have your guy standing there giving me a 1,000-yard stare as he is freaking the fuck out. Then I know he's panicking. But yeah. Environmental storytelling falls under show, don't tell. And environmental storytelling is good. It is very important to use because, again, it allows you to convey things without having to say it. And then next is establish the norm. Establishing the norm is very similar to what Bird Bunch had mentioned as far as actual supernatural gods. The society will not look like regular real-life world. So think of it also like this. In our world, it's normal to see a lot of things like cell phones, TVs, airplanes, etc. All of these are considered part of the norm. However, just a few decades ago, this technology was considered science fiction. Think of something that happens regularly in your world and shift it to be something that is common occurrence. The main character doesn't bat an eye at the large, overly complex thingamajig that's in the neighbor's house. It's just the main communication relay that every town has. So it's normal. It's perfectly fine. Meanwhile, the player might be like, wow, that's a big-ass machine. The fuck does it do? Oh, it's a communication relay. That makes sense. I imagine for this level of technology, they would take big things. But it still helps set the norm that, yes, they do have something close to what the player is familiar with, but it might not be on the same technological level, or it might not be as compact, or other things, or it might be done a different way as well entirely. You have to think of it in a sense of how can you normalize it, and once you normalize it, make it the norm across the board. You go to another town, they have a communication relay. You go to the next town, they also have a communication relay. So on and so forth. It's a part of the norm. You might not have to interact with every single one of them, but seeing that one, weird tower thing sticking out of one of the houses, that would be, again, environmental storytelling, but also establishing the norm as to the rest of the world, what they have and what to expect. Yeah, they still use horses to get around, because while they were able to make, freaking radios, cars are still difficult for the most part. So they still use horse and buggies, or maybe they're starting to work on steam power. So again, establishing a norm that is throughout the entire world, or at least the entire area that the player is going to be dealing with. Magic. Magic being in the world would also be considered part of the norm, if it is in your world. It can be seen as something rare, but can still considered part of the norm. It's like, hey, you see the new guy in town? I hear he's a mage from the big city. And someone else says, yeah, I saw him roast a kobold that attacked the caravan when they were coming in. That establishes the norm that, yes, magic is in this world, and it's rare to see, or it's, it's something as far as like a big spectacle. You have established the norm with 2 sentences that magic is here, and there's a guy here who knows magic. They might be able to teach you magic. Stuff like that. And also, I'd like to point out, you should establish the norm early on. That should be something done at the beginning and early parts of the middle, never at the end. The end of your arcs, the last arc, is the end of the story. Do not introduce new information at the end. The end is for conclusions. I swear to God, if one of you makes a game where the last 20 minutes is, oh, we've just found out about a whole new island we gotta fuck off to in order to fight this last boss, because it turns out he was actually secretly sending clones out through magical science that he has stolen from a distant future. I'm gonna come to your house and I'm gonna put mayonnaise in all of your shoes and proceed to shave every person and animal in that house. Every Final Fantasy ever. Yes and no. Yes and no. And I say yes and no because some of them do it, some of them don't. But at least with them, they kind of do hint at and build up through the most part. But there is very weird disparages of technology in like every Final Fantasy. I will definitely agree with that. It's like, oh cool, we're using swords and spears and bows. Cool. And we have an airship. The fuck how? I've got a gunblade. I got an nunchuck. I got my fist. I have a flying ship. What? Yeah, no, it's... Final Fantasy VIII is my favorite Final Fantasy, but I am more than willing to rip it a new one when it comes to almost everything in regards to it. Because, yeah, there are some things in Final Fantasy VIII that just are not good, even though I love it very, very, very much. But yes, again, establish the norms, introduce information at the beginning and the early parts of the middle arcs, never at the end, and make sure that you make that norm universal, where it's essentially immutable. If you're going to put magic in your game, sure, magic is in the game. But magic itself, it spreads into two of soft magic and hard magic. Soft magic is kind of like the whole, Wave's Hand wizard did it. Hard magic is more of like, no, there is actual rituals and shit that goes into this. Star, welcome. Also, I knew hard would be the word that gets you. I made myself chuckle. So, good practices. This one is going to get... So, this in itself has its own large section of when it comes to my writing and what I had to prepare in regards to this. So, when it comes to good practices, improve or fail. The first one is tenses. This is something I suffer for every now and then with my writings, but I have the common decency to go back and edit. There are past, present, and future tense. There's also variable. So there's actually 4 types of tenses, but the most common that people know is past, present, and future. Past, you are getting things like, for simple, which is simple past tense, is she walked over to Jerry's. Then there's continuous, which is for actions that were ongoing in the past, such as she was walking over to Jerry's. Perfect is essentially for actions completed before another past action, such as she had walked over to Jerry's before he tripped. And then perfect continuous is for ongoing actions completed before another past action. She had been walking over to Jerry's when he tripped. And this breaks down for each of them. For present tense, there's simple, continuous, perfect, and perfect continuous. And the same for future. Learn your fucking tenses. I don't ever want to see one sentence to be in past tense when it comes to the descriptor, and then future tense when talking about the same event. Such as, she walked over to Jerry's. She will have been walking over there for a few minutes by noon. If you put that in one singular sentence or right beside each other, that's wrong grammatically, and I hate you for it. And I get it. Past, present, future. Which is normally like, it happened, it's happening, and it will happen. So will, is, had. It's the best way I could break it down as far as this. Past, it had happened. Or was happened. Or was happening in the past. Present tense. It is happening now. It is happening right now. Or it has happened right now up to a certain point, or is still continuing at this point. Future is, it's not happened yet, but it's going to soon. And if you don't know what the future is, it's going to be soon. Don't blink, you already missed the future. Now we're waiting on a new future. Not that future, different future. But yeah, it gets pretty confusing because there is, like I said, it breaks down to simple, continuous, perfect, and perfect continuous for each of these, with the exception of variable. Variable is essentially for two things. Conditional and subjunctive. So conditional is pretty much as you'd think. She would walk over to Jerry's if it wasn't raining. That's, it's conditional. Subjunctive is for hypothetical or speculative speaking, such as, if she were to walk over to Jerry's, she might arrive late. That's it. That's essentially the only things when it comes to a variable. It doesn't have past perfect or it doesn't have simple continuous, perfect continuous, or anything like that. It is purely conditional. Hey, she would do it if it wasn't for this. And subjunctive, which is, if she were to, this might happen. That's all when it comes to it. The reason why I separated it over to this is because on paper, with everything that I had to write out for my own sanity, when it comes to the differences not only between these 4 different tenses, but also an example for each and a breakdown of each, took up like 2 pages on its own. But yeah, when you are first writing your story, determine if it's going to be in past, present, or future. Variable can happen at any time. But everything that is written is best written in past and present. Dialogue can follow these two at any time. Actually, dialogue can happen all 4 for dialogue. But events or written descriptions is always past or present. Did I miss the end of the game? No, I didn't do a game today. I am doing writing. We were talking about writing and how to make your writing not suck. So yeah, that's about the different tenses. Please, for the love of God, have the decency to learn at least a little bit about proper way of using past, present, and future tenses and the conditional tenses, or the variable tenses. And the next one is obviously edit. 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 Never be afraid to go back and edit or revise your work. Sometimes having another set of eyes read what you have written can help point out flaws or different forms of thinking or even interpretation of what you have. If you have a character that is distant and cold with how they do things, then a reader may think that they're a jackass because they have a distant and cold way of doing things, while others may think them hiding something or hiding how they truly feel in order to protect themselves as they are making hard choices. Ignore him and ignore grammar rules and do what you want. No. No, Chaos. No. Bad. Bad, Chaos. Where's my squirt gun? Here's this. Stop. Stop. Bad, Chaos. God dang it. Stop throwing things at me. This is what I get. Anyways, when it comes to editing and grammar rules, again, I must specify, when it comes to descriptor of scenes, items, and so on, proper grammar must be followed. But when it comes to dialogue, how a person speaks or a character in the process of speaking, that does not follow proper grammar. Because if you are a native English speaker, there is a good chance you do not speak proper English. Because, well, we just don't do it. We invent new words, new slangs, new different things. We'll even change how we speak in order to sound a certain way, because of an accent or a dialect and so on. So keep that in mind as you edit back and go through. Again, it can be used as a seasoning to make a character more interesting because of the way that they speak. I'll tell you no all I want, Chaos. I played a game by a non-native English speaker. It was very well done, but grammar is all wrong. I'm guessing you meant all wrong, but no, I get that. And there's also like another thing, when it comes to English-ish languages. So English itself is like a bastardization hodgepodge of multiple languages, which is cool, but at the same time, for real though, if you're writing and you're not sure how it sounds, put it in Google Translate and play it back in the language it's written. You'll catch a few things you wouldn't have realized. True. Also, key thing to note, quotation marks are different based upon the region. If you see quotation marks like this, good chance they are native English speaker from the UK or the US. If you see it like this, they are from Eastern, well, mid to Mid-Eastern Europe, because that's how their quotation marks work. Oxford comma, I love the Oxford comma, we need to bring it back. Yes, I agree agreed with you in regards to the Oxford comma. But when it comes, again, so Oxford comma, for those of you who don't know, it's the comma that appears before the conjunction in a list of multiple items. So if you say steak, chicken, or pork for dinner, steak and chicken would have a comma after them. That's the Oxford comma. So same if, like, I have 3 animals and you list off their names, then the first 2 would have a comma between them and then the last one. And the reason why the Oxford comma is there, again, is for writing, because otherwise you get words that slam together. Or, essentially the way it's written, say, I have 3 dogs. Let's see, what's some good names for your 3 dogs? Sheba, Barf, and Fart. So I have Sheba, Barf, and Fart. No, I didn't get it. Sheba, Barf, and Fart. Those are my 3 dogs. Shiba, Barf, and Fart. Now, if I wrote this to you, saying I have these 3 dogs, you would say, okay, cool, you have 3 dogs named Shiba, Barf, and Fart. You know, 1 for each. But if I say I have 3 dogs, and I write it like this, you're going to think one of the dogs is named Barf and Fart. And then you're like, what's the 3rd dog's name? That's why we have extra Spanish quotation marks. I thought it was primarily over the Eastern Europe, but it might be Western as well. Also, and I'm in the Discord if you want me to proofread and help editing. I'm happy to do it for free. Barf and Fart is the name of my dog. Star, I feel bad for your dog. Then again, I call my cat fucking garbage kitten every now and then, so. But yeah, again, when it comes to written descriptions and such, past and present tense, dialogue can be any of them depending on the situation and doesn't follow the same grammar rules. However, the Oxford comma is necessary and required in written dialogue if you're talking about multiple things. Because again, you got to make sure that you're specifying. Okay? Also, Bird Bunch, you might think she's joking, but no, Chaos actually will. They've edited stuff for me back when we used to work in the same place. So, thankfully, I've gotten better at my writing, so I don't make the mistakes again that I used to when it comes to the tenses. Yes, I used to mix up tenses a lot because brain don't work well. But anyways, last one. Outline. Outline. For the love of God, use a Word doc. There's a bunch of different free ones out there. There's Google Doc. There's WordPad. OpenOffice. Fucking Notepad if you have to. Outline the overall story arcs and major beats before you get down to details is one of the best practices. It's not as fun as just jumping into it, I know, but it makes for going back and editing and shifting goalposts just a little bit easier. It also helps with better building, foreshadowing, and the one biggest thing of all, consistency. Alright? Storyboarding and outlining is basic building blocks of any project, be it for books, movies, TV shows, comic books, small animations, so on and so forth. Outlines and storyboards are 100% necessary. I get that they're not fun. I've done them. I've also done the whole, make by the seat of my pants thing. I get it. I really do. It's not as fun as just jumping into it. But for the sake of anyone who does quality testing for you, please make a fucking Word doc. I wish I could write as part of a team. I have lots of ideas, and I think I'm pretty okay with it. I just really suck at sticking to things on my own. No, I get that, and it's difficult. It's part of the reason why a lot of people do work as part of teams. They tend to pull in 1 or 2 other people at most. There's also a lot of solo devs, and this is kind of what it's also pointed towards, is you solo devs out there, for the love of God, please, if you are uncertain, ask for feedback, and then heed that feedback. Don't just take the feedback and be like, okay, cool, and then do nothing. If you wanted feedback, value the feedback, especially if it is critiquing and giving constructive criticism. If it's saying, oh man, this shit sucks, and that nothing else, fine, you know what, disregard it. But if it tells you why it sucks, then listen to it, and then use that to build something better. And an outline would help, because then you can go back to the Word doc, find the exact spot they're talking about, change it there, and then work from there as far as moving essentially goalposts and so on, and shifting them to where you could be like, okay, that one path didn't work. This one should. Have a free writing page, then go into the outline to clean it up if you need to. Sometimes starting with outlines is super overwhelming. Yes. Early feedback is so helpful. Yes. Swear to God, I have worked with so many people that do not do outlines. And I'll admit it, when I first started doing projects, I was one of them. I didn't do the outlines. I didn't do the storyboarding. Because I thought, I'm just doing this to try and essentially learn RPG Maker VXAs. And I did learn some. I did learn how to do a number of things in it. And how to work the events, the conditional branches, the switches, and so on. But dear God, there was no way that project was getting past like a 20-minute playtime, because no. Actually, no, that's a lie. The most I got to was an hour. But even then, no. Because if I'd given that to people, and they're like, oh hey, you should fix this interaction. And it's like, oh cool, where the fuck was that interaction? I don't do outlines because I'm lazy. I also typically don't get past 2 or 3 pages, so they might be related. Lazy and stricken with ADHD and executive dysfunction, yes. Oh, and Chaos gave me the stretch, which is probably good. So everyone, stretch break. Everybody, not just me. Bird, you need a stretch break. I know you've been playing fighting games all day, getting your ass kicked by Dan. Is Dan the one with the pink? Stretch all the way up. All the way up. Arms all the way up. All the way down till you touch your toes. I'm almost there. Just a little bit closer. Don't bend your knees. Yeah. And all the way to the right. As far as you'll go without falling over. All the way to the left. I'm an old man when I talk like this. But that's because I'm straining and holding my breath. There we go. And then star. Star. Wonderful star. 10 25-pound squats. Alright. I see how it's going to be. I'm getting bullied in my own stream. Stretching my capacity for worshipping the porcelain throne again today. Look, you messed up something. That's all I'm saying. You mixed things that you should not have mixed, either in those glasses or in your stomach. I don't know which, but you did it, and you shouldn't have. All right, got both. They were set at 25 each. 1 squat, all the way down. 2 squat, keep my back straight. 3 squat. Oh, I could do this. 4 squats. I will have my revenge star. 5 squats. Whew. 6 squats. 7 squats. 8 squats. 9 squats. 66 squats this morning and jogged for 2 miles. That's squat. Ring Fit Adventure is amazing. I have thought about getting a Switch so I can play that. Because I hear that would definitely help me lose this dad bod that I got going. So, with those being the main things in regards to each section, the crafting of the main story, the crafting of the main character, the supporting cast, the world building, and some of the good practice out there, I want to put out there are plenty of other points to hit. There's plenty of other spots to clean up. But as I was mentioning before, feedback. Whew, I need a drink. Maybe see if the Switch 2 is backwards compatible, or get a Switch on sale. I don't know. I don't like buying stuff for myself. That's part of the reason why I don't have a Switch or a PS5. I don't like the idea of buying stuff for myself. It doesn't help that I was doing squats earlier today already. I've actually done about 40 squats today. That was the first time with the weights, but I've done about 40 squats today. Whew. Right. Shocking. What are you shocking? Huh? Whew. Alright. Breath caught. Water drink. Let's go. So, as I was going to say, feedback. Feedback is one of the biggest things that you can get. Because regardless of if you hit every single main point on this list and all the ones that I didn't go over, feedback is king. Why is feedback king? Because feedback equals audience input. It doesn't matter if what you wrote is one of the poorest written, sloppy seconds kind of smut out there. It doesn't matter if it's about a minotaur who has sprouted wings in order to make love to Hera. It doesn't matter. Feedback is what matters. If your audience gets your story, be it for a book, a movie, comic book, tabletop RPG, what have you, whatever it is, if the audience that you are aiming at gets it and provides you feedback, then you need to listen to that feedback. Also get feedback from a variety of people, not just your target audience. Otherwise, you won't expand and grow. Yes and no. Yes and no, I agree with that, and here is why. Do you guys not have phones? God, I believe those are some of the worst words ever said at a BlizzCon. Wait, no. The worst words ever said at a BlizzCon was, "Hey, is that breast milk?" No, wait, that was the Blizz office. Never mind. The best line reminding devs. Yeah. Listen to your players. Primarily the target audience, but like 25% other. I would never want a homophobe to read everything I've ever written. Yeah. You want, and the reason why I said yes or no is that, primarily the target audience, but like 25% other. That 25% other, when it comes to the solo dev community, is the RPG Maker community. That Discord, the other Discords, the subreddit, all of that. All of that is the 25% other. They are the ones that are helping you refine pieces of your product or your project that either the audience would notice but not understand, or they will be pointing out flaws that they know they would be looking for in other games. How many of you have played a game and you saw a flaw in it? It doesn't matter how minute or how major, but you saw a flaw in it and it kind of made you go, well, that's annoying. And it stuck with you for the rest of the damn game. I would like to point out, Fallout 4 has a mod to turn the toilet paper the other way. Because the devs installed the toilet paper in the game as under instead of over. And I want you to keep in mind that someone took the time to mod Fallout 4 to fix that. Now, I'm not saying mods are bad. What I'm saying is, if your game requires a lot of mods in order to be enjoyable, you have done something wrong. Sometimes you're just too close to things to not know what's going on. Yes. Sometimes you are too close to the small details to notice the bigger picture. Other times, you're looking too much at the bigger picture to notice the small details. It's a weird one way and the other kind of thing. Cat owners, I guess. I don't know. I haven't had any issues in the bathroom out of my cat, other than sometimes she'll sit on the toilet and scream at me while I'm brushing my teeth for some reason. I don't get it, but yeah. That being said, listening to others in your field, others who are also working on projects, and their feedback is important for refining the project before you send it out to the masses. Again, you are aiming for a target audience, and the good chance is the majority of that target audience will not be other developers like you. However, they will be consumers of that product. And in the case of RPGs, there is thousands of RPGs out there, both good and bad, shovelware to pristine nuggets, to even, diamonds in the rough, or just a fucking diamond in the trash bin. There are thousands of RPGs out there. But making sure that yours is not remembered for shitty text boxes, inconsistent art, a storyline that makes no goddamn sense, or worse yet, terribly written characters. That is important, because every single piece of that detracts from the overall product. It's a death by 1,000 cuts, as I've said before. And focusing on the writing like today of Writing 101 is about one major piece that goes into the product as a whole. I can't make your game perfect. You can't make your game perfect. But we might be able to make it good. We might be able to say, hey, we can at least make this portion of your game not suck. So I need you to understand feedback means audience input. Because it is better to fix things before they are sent out to the masses than after. Because how many times have you seen it? A game gets put on Steam, thousands of people download it. They review bomb the shit out of it because there's just so many things wrong with it. The game ends up getting delisted, or the dev ends up having to give out all sorts of refunds for the game. And then it hurts their rating overall. It puts a bad taste in everyone's mouths to where they're going to look at that dev's name every time a new product comes out. And it's like, is it that dev? Was it that guy who made that other game that, was just tone deaf as hell with its depictions of other races or cultures? That's what you have to think about when it comes to what you're putting out. It's not only what is the finished product that you currently have, how it can be refined, and how can you put it out without it biting you in the ass later. Because it's going to bite you in the ass later if you do it wrong. Ugh. Fun times all around. But yes, when it comes to writing in general, making sure that your game doesn't suck. Making sure that you have a well-written main character, a well-written main story, how to write better supporting cast members, or further developing world building. Any questions, concerns, hypotheses, thoughts of the future, winning lotto numbers, anything. Just do better. Look, I'm not saying that you should invest in a writing class, but I will say there are actual writing books out there that tell you how to write better. I can only tell you, hey, don't do this. I can't tell you your idea is never going to get off the ground. Tell me your fortune, or tell you your fortune. Well, uh, I can ask the dice. Where's my D20? I can ask the dice what is it? Actually, I'm gonna use the bullet dice that my girlfriend gave me some time ago. Where's the D20 bullet? There it is. All right, magical D20. Is Star going to get super popular? I got a 13, so that's looking good. So, good things in the future, Star. I recommend listening to Totally Not Mark's video on writing. Yes. And here's something, and I want to point this out because I saw Sai in here, and I got a buck saying Forta. Yeah, Forta, I can see your invisible chocobo. I know you're lurking here, 40. No, that wasn't. Secondary thought. Time travel. Time travel. I don't know if I mentioned this, but do you know why I don't like time travel? Anyone have a good idea? The reason I hate time travel is because it invites problems. It invites problems and paradoxes. Because you don't like fun, paradoxes. It's not anti-fun, it's anti-headache. I wonder if I could find the exact quote. But it was from the book/movie known as The Time Machine, from back in 2002. But there was a phrase in it where they mentioned, I could go back 1,000 times and she will die 1,000 different ways. And it was about the time traveler, the man who made the time machine, going back in time to save the life of his beloved. And he did it. He went back thousands and thousands of times to save her, to stop her from dying. And he did everything he could. He even tried making sure that they were nowhere near the scene in which she dies at. And she still dies a different way. At the same time. On the same night. All the time. Every time. And he says, I could go back 1,000 times, and she will simply die 1,000 different ways. I believe that is the proper way of doing time travel. That there are simply fixed points. You can go back and try and try and try to change it, but it's never going to change. Because it can't change. Because if you did change it, you get the grandfather paradox, which is if you go back in time and kill your grandfather before you were born, how did you go back in time to kill your grandfather? Because you were never born, so therefore you never went back in time to kill him. Therefore, you were never born if you did kill him. And if you were never born, you'd never have a reason to go back in time, because you'd never be able to go back in time. I love the way Ben 10 did time travel, where nothing they see in the future ever mattered via alternate universes and timelines. Let's see. Or make time travel involuntary. Groundhog Day is kind of time travel. Yes, Groundhog Day is kind of time travel. And again, it has that set fixed point, though. It's kind of the same thing. He goes back hundreds and thousands of times, and it's always at the same time he starts and when he ends, until he gets essentially the timeline he is supposed to stay in. And I do, unfortunately, hate time travel and multiverses. And I hate time travel and multiverses for one unfortunate reason. It's a cop-out. It's a cop-out that was invented purely for humoring an idea of what if. What if Loki was a good guy? What if Steve Rogers was captured by Hydra, or found by Hydra in the Frozen Ice? What if Thanos was right? All of these different what-if scenarios and multiverses things have become so popular and prevalent in pop culture these days that the whole thing even further became, oh, you're not really traveling time. You're just traveling to an alternate reality or an alternate timeline or, something like that. And it's become so prevalent. It's annoying. And it's so poorly done that it's a cop-out. It's like, oh, no. I'm not Ian from your universe. I'm Ian from this alternate timeline universe where instead of growing a full beard, I grew handlebar mustaches and I ride around on a motorcycle smacking people in the kneecap. Things like that. So the idea of, well, why does this alternate universe exist? Why does this multiverse exist? All of that. It's so overused and so poorly done that it's not enjoyable anymore. And that's part of the reason why Psy and Forticus, you know who you are, Fortispecticus, why I gave you guys such crap about your games with dealing with time travel. Because no one ever does it right. Again, Psy, I do appreciate the fact that yours is the fact of, oh hey, they're, isolated from the rest of the time stream when they do the time travel. They're quite literally plucked out of the universe and put back in because they were isolated. I get that. I do appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that, they're way older at the end because, yeah, we went back in time and, we kind of got stuck. So we just waited. That works. And also at the same time, they didn't try and stop anything that they could have stopped because they knew, well, if we try, we're possibly going to fuck things up. So we're not going to try. We're just going to stay low and stay off to the side and not interact with the past versions of ourselves. Because again, totally make things worse. Bender did that once. Yeah, I vaguely remember that. Futurama hand waves a lot of things, though. Enjoy time travel and multiverse when it's not over-explained. Not every main character would know how and why, and if it doesn't make sense to them, don't worry about that world-building depth, just enough to not cause issues. Yeah, I can agree with that. Because also at the same time, when you think about it, it's like, oh, you thought world building for your single world is gonna, go great. If you're world building for the alternate secret secondary timeline where you chose the red pill that's laced with gold or something and you turned inside out because of it, then congratulations, you're now gonna have to write an entire separate story. And in which that case, just make an entirely separate game instead of making it all in one game. I will hydrate. Thank you. But yeah. Please stop using time travel and multiverses as a cop-out. Write your story. Write it contained to a singular timeline, a singular universe. Unless the story absolutely requires alterations done that. In which case, you better do it right. And which, I mean this. My roommate and his D&D campaign that went on for a few years, I was part of the last half of it, and in the last sessions, one of the players had time traveled to prevent a party wipe. He traveled back and essentially was able to give everyone a redo of that battle, of the day before and that battle, to where they didn't wipe. In exchange, the god of time themselves said, alright, you're on the hook for something later, to where you have to fix something in order for everything to be made right. Else, the future in which all of you died will come true. And they're like, I'm good with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. The end of the story was that one of the main villains had stolen a singular moment from time. A singular 30 seconds from time. That 30 seconds was the 30 seconds that he dies. And the reason why he didn't want that to happen is obviously he didn't want to die. But the reason why it needed to happen is that his death allowed us to fight and defeat an old god that was rebelling and trying to take back his power and essentially cause the end of the world. And the guy who essentially stole his moment of time was constantly traveling back to essentially build himself up and further prevent himself from dying. But it was just making things worse. It was making things more unstable. It was making things breaking down more and more and more because he had disrupted the flow. And time didn't know what to do. So the only way to fix everything was to put it back the way it was. So he put it back the way it was. Only to try and save himself, and he ended up dying immediately after because he had to die in order for the timeline to fix itself. Now, we killed the god, and then, yeah, Doctor Strange bore the evil guy out. Oh god, I wish. But because we had fixed that spot in the timeline, the spot that we created, or rather that player had created with his other character, got corrected too. Meaning, that spot got fixed to where it was no longer looping back. It was just a new passage in the timeline, to where there was no alternate timeline. Now, do I feel like that was perfectly done? No. But I liked it because it erased an entire future and looped it back on itself until it was created or until it was corrected and fixed, and the future could proceed on like it needed to. Any have a problem with brainstorming alternatives, reach out to your community to see if they can help. Yes. Your community can always help. There is so many writers, musicians, and so on in the RPG Maker community. Just fucking use them. Come on. Your community is support. Cool beats. Oh shit, an ad played. I'm sure it's fine. Right then. What was else? There was something else. Use your Word docs for the love of God. Edit. Tenses. Different tenses. Too many tenses. The tenses. Establish the 5 25-pound curls from Plexicraft because he decided, hey, Ian had mentioned all the squats that he did today. He should do his arms too. Oh. Alright, fine. I'll do my arms too. Hang tight, gotta level up Ian's strength. I'll have you know, I don't mind heavy lifting. It's real men like curves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh. 5 more at 10 pounds. Give me a moment. 5, 10, 5, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Set the back at 25 because that's where they belong. Oh. Well, that certainly woke my arms up. Whew. I'm going to have to do more, otherwise it's going to feel weird. Damn it. Right. Any questions, concerns, or anything like that, class? I just put them... Alright, fine. I just put them away, but fine. 5, 10, 10. 1. Oh, shit. That's okay. 2, 3, 4, 5. To answer your question, Star, yes. This will be up... oh, I turned it the wrong way. This will be uploaded later on to the tube. The tube of you. And yes, I did say I need to do more. I'll do those later. Chest presses and such. All of my streams from now on will be on the YouTube that's linked down below. So that way I can essentially archive things and essentially give them to people who might be overseas when they watch. Because I know Bird Bunch is overseas, but there are others who are overseas, and they might be in different time zones. It's nice and informative. A lot of people skip out on these kind of things, but it's really good to see / hear. Yeah. Yeah, my hydrate emote. I'm still working on more emotes. Let's see if I can actually open. Emotes. So I got a munch one that I worked on. Lurk. A bunch of other ones here. As you can see, my way of doing things is not great. This one's like broken up. But yeah, I've also got like sub badges and so on that I've done. So, yeah. But yes, I'm always happy to do dev talks and talk about writing or other things as best as I can. I'm not as great when it comes to design as far as like drawings and such, because that's just not where my strength is. But what I can do is help with making sure your stories actually make sense and essentially flow better. Because again, pacing is a major thing, and I'd spoken that some about back during the arcs, but pacing your arcs is very important. The pacing of your story overall is also important. There's no reason to introduce the love interest in like page 5, and where it's like, he laid eyes upon her and he knew from an instant that he was going to marry her. And then like 5 pages later, he's like proclaiming his love. Yeah, it's moving a little too fast there. So don't do that. Instead, make it, not quite a slow burn, but more of like, yeah, hey baby, sup? What you doing? Things like that. I like to think I'm a good artist. I like to think I am bad. Normal paces. No, we don't do normal paces here. We go at blazing speed. Anyways, I'm going to go have a brownie. Because I want a brownie. Wait, no, I'm out of brownies. I'm going to go have some ice cream. No. Lemon cake. I'm going to go have some lemon cake. Because I have lemon cake. And I like lemon cake. So to each of you, every single one of you, thank you for coming by. Thank you for interacting with the stream and giving me your ears for a little bit. I hope that this was informative, and as always, I am more than willing to talk more about anything on this list or expand further on in the future if needed. What kind of brownie? I had the star brownies, the Little Debbie ones, cosmic brownies. I had some of those, but they're all gone now. So all I got is lemon cake. So I'm gonna go eat lemon cake because I got that for Christmas. So, everyone, thank you once again. My name is Ian, the Part-Time Experience, and I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your day. Want to raid out to? Let me think. I have never actually used the raid feature now that I think about it. Who do I know that is currently streaming?